Live. Are you sure?
I'm
Yes.
sure.
Hello, hello everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to, I don't know what to call this, the book club. It is not the Friday Night Lloyd stream. I am your host, Ian Patty Cake, author, idiot, and Lloyd streamer. And today I have a special guest, Effie. Would you like to say anything about yourself?
As soon as I catch my breath, give me a minute.
Until then, just know that Lace and Leather continues to give pleasure even after the book reading is over.
So much pleasure. That is absolutely what this facial expression is.
Well, while Effie catches her breath, today we're going to be discussing a book. It is much more traumatic. Well, no, I think it's less traumatic than Leather and Lace, but in a different way. Only because I had to suffer. Look, No Longer Human was only like 120 pages. Leather and Lace was like, if you read this 5 times.
Yeah, you're a better person than I am.
Oh no! Why did you say that?
I couldn't do it, man. I couldn't do it.
So, Leather and Lace. I'm about to say. So, Leather and Lace. We're actually discussing Leather and Lace today, but No Longer Human. We will be doing a discussion of. We'll be walking through the prologue or through the story in case you haven't read it, and discussing our different things. And we may or may not compare it to Dead Skin Mask by Thomas Godfrey, because there are some similarities. And Effie recently released a book review on Dead Skin Mask, and so we both might as well talk about that because I read it during Christmas while I was playing Yakuza.
It's not a Christmas book.
No, it's not. I mean, they did leave a present for the police, but
Gifts all around. Complete with candlelight. I'm sorry, that's in bad taste.
No, it's fine. You can make candles out of his body. That's a thing. Anyway. Hey, Rainer is back. Welcome back, Crabman. You're just getting here for the introductions. As Effie catches her breath so that she can introduce herself and tell us everything she needs to, that we should know about her.
I'm Effie. I am not I'm not a loin streamer, but I am an author and an idiot and sometimes a robot.
Hey. It takes one to know one.
Kindred spirits.
We kind of just call it the hive mind, the programming. What is it? GitHub. That's just where we're from. And so, No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. I was butchering an Australian name earlier when I was doing a video, and I'm like, Manaya's gonna freaking kill me if he hears this.
Australian names are in English.
Well, no, because you've got like Melbourne is said differently depending on where you're from. And then you've got names that are like the Mick names.
Nobody says Melbourne. It's Melbourne.
I'm from Florida. There's a Melbourne, Florida.
No, it's Melbourne. All the Brits and Aussies are screaming.
Is that because of the pain of being in the sun? So you're like, it's a Melbourne. So this book also has been turned into comic books. Some pretty famous ones. One is by Junjo Ito. And I heard there's another one, but I don't remember. And I almost felt like reading that as well to kind of compare with the different formations. This book is told sort of in the form of an autobiography. It kind of made me think, I don't know if you ever read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which was a fiction book that was also written like a nonfiction. Yeah. And so that's kind of what this is written like as well.
Yeah, where it like, so do you mind? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, like I said, interject whenever you want to interject.
Awesome. Just making sure. Yeah. So at the beginning and at the end, there are these little like micro chapters where a person who is a novelist, or the narrator who is the novelist, basically says, I've seen these pictures of this person. I was given these notebooks. Here is the story, that I was given in these notebooks. So it's like a story within a story within a story sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And so the prologue starts out. We got the prologue and the epilogue. The prologue starts out with the comment. I have seen 3 pictures of the man. I said the narrator judging himself, but later, with the epilogue, I discovered it was not the narrator, or it was the narrator, but it was not the guy in the autobiography himself. Descriptions of a photograph of a boy the narrator believes is ugly. The first image mentioned is that of a child that he says, you see that it is actually not a smiling face at all. The boy is not a suggestion of a smile. Look at his tightly clenched fists if you want proof. No human can smile with his fists doubled like that. It is a monkey, a grinning monkey face. The smile is nothing more than a puckering of ugly wrinkles. The photograph reproduces an expression so freakish and at the same time so unclean and even nauseating that your impulse is to say, what a wizened, hideous little boy. The second image is of a handsome man in high school or college, smiling, but like a blank sheet of paper. Then the third image is a monstrous, no smile, standing in a dirty, broken room, quote, as if the camera caught him in the act of dying. The face is not merely devoid of expression, it fails even to leave a memory. It has no individuality. And with that description of who this book is going to be about, then we get into the life and times of Yozo.
Yeah, then it starts its story. After it introduces you in a way that it's very clear that the narrator does not like him.
Well, the question that I have there is it that the narrator doesn't like him or the narrator is judging this stuff post after knowing the story?
Well, you would assume that he's writing the foreword after he knows the story. He's not going to publish the notebooks without having read them.
But so does he actually think that this person was terrible, or is he taking the descriptions that Yozo has of himself and interpreting Yozo's pictures?
True.
Because Yozo hates himself through this whole thing.
Absolutely does, yes. It's weird how much he hates himself considering the monstrous size of his ego.
There's that. But then he also takes it like he has such a disconnection, and we'll get to it at that point. But for me, and I'll be interested in seeing, I was reading this and I was interested in what your perspective was going to be on his wife that actually made him feel worse.
I thought it made him more human.
I did too. Well, that's what I mean. Is like he had a wife before that like we'll get that in the first chapter.
Yeah.
But then he had the future wife that he actually valued her, and though he was afraid of women, he actually valued this other wife, and it made him feel like a terrible person. He actually felt something with his other wife.
Yeah, it's the first time he felt like an actual human being and made a connection to another person, and he ruined it.
and he didn't know how to fix it, and he tried so hard. Well, he tried hard in the way that he could conceptualize trying hard. I'm not saying that he did well. I'm saying he's kind of dumb.
I mean, he hid on the roof and just let things happen to her.
Oh, I mean, after. I meant afterwards.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I meant the fallout. Like he saw her suffering after, and he's like, how do I fix this? I made a bad decision. How do I fix this? And he realized what he did to her by not doing anything.
Yeah. That he's ruined her, basically.
Forever. Yeah. And he did take that personally. Whereas he didn't really take it personally when his other wife killed herself with him.
No responsibility at all.
But the second wife, that did happen. So that was, but I was going to be interested in hearing your perspective on the contrast between those. It's getting into chapter 1. Starts out, mine has been a life of much shame. The introduction to the main character's life being born in a remote village where he didn't even know what a train was for a while. And he thought trains were cool until he learned that they had a purpose. And then they were not cool anymore. He also was a very sickly child, and he never felt hunger. That is, he could just eat and eat and eat and never feel hungry or full. So he just didn't see the point in eating when he didn't feel hungry. And then he wondered what the purpose of it was when he watched other people eat and he didn't feel anything. This is more just to establish how not human he felt and how different he felt from his peers.
It wasn't just he didn't feel the need to eat. He was utterly unable to derive pleasure from food. And I think that that's an experience most of us have. Like, he just didn't get it. He's like, why are people so enthralled with this eating thing? I understand that I have to, or else I'm going to die. But would that really be such a bad thing? Like, it's all very disconnected.
Mm-hmm. So he says, nothing was so hard for me to understand, so baffling and at the same time so filled with menacing overtones as the commonplace remark, human beings work to earn their bread, for if they don't eat, they die. He had no concept of this, which made him have a disassociation with humanity and what it means to be human. Also, he lacked empathy and understanding of emotions, needs, or thoughts of his family. He figured he'd learn how to make people laugh in order to blend in with them better, but people genuinely scared him because he didn't understand how they worked. he also was to the point that he couldn't use the phrase I like or I didn't like. And if asked, would you like something, or can I bring you something, or what would you like, he couldn't answer. As in, when one of the examples that was given was when his father was going to Tokyo, he asked, would you like me to bring you a book? And he couldn't even say yes.
Well, I don't know that, excuse me.
He described it as he couldn't say yes.
It was more than that, though. It's not that he couldn't say yes. It's that he had the inability to desire anything at all. It's not that he couldn't answer whether or not he wanted the book. He genuinely didn't know if he wanted the book or the mask. Like, he had no preference. He's like, do what you want to do. And the dad's like, no, I want to know what you want. And he's like, I want nothing. I'm fine. And he just has no opinions on anything at all, ever.
Well, he didn't like trains after they had a job.
I don't know that he didn't like trains so much as he became unenamored with them, which I think is different.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I don't think he disliked them. I think that once the mystery of them and the strangeness of them was gone, that they were no longer of any interest at all. Like, he just didn't care. And I feel like a lot of that reflects who he is as a person all throughout the book. Like, once he understands how something works, he loses interest in it. He does the same thing with prostitutes later.
Is that why do you think that's what affected kind of his disposition with his second wife, and that he didn't understand her virtue or her kindness, and he never really could?
Yeah, well, until it was broken, and then
But he still didn't understand her at that point.
No, but he is probably one of the most innately selfish characters I've ever read. And it's hard to say that you like a book like this. It's a hard thing to say because it's so depressing. And it's such this like exquisite exploration of human loneliness. I don't know another way to describe it.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah.
Because you can feel his loneliness all throughout the entirety of the book. So Yozo just sort of goes along with with everything the best that he can, since he doesn't really want anything, and he doesn't really know how to communicate with people, and he really doesn't want to communicate with people, even his own family. So he pretends to be like everyone else. He is also very smart, top of his class, even when he misses his lessons. After watching people, he is sure that there are plenty of people who live their lives in benign deceit, but he's sure that there's no way to live happily that way, which is also interesting. An interesting comment that's made earlier on, because he lives his entire life in deceit.
His whole life is a lie, and he lives in absolute terror that he's going to be found out.
Yeah. And so he looks at other people's lying and deceit, and he goes, there's no way that anybody can be happy lying.
Well, but that's a thing he knows to be true. He knows that he is always lying and lives in terror of being found out, and therefore believes that that's the reason he's miserable. So clearly that must be true for everyone else, right?
But then why doesn't he ever just tell the truth? Yeah,
so I feel like, and I've scribbled all over this book. You should have notes all over the margin. When I was reading about his like early childhood, when he was little, when they were, talking about his dad asking him, do you want this book or do you want this mask? The whole time I'm sitting there going, why has no one taken this boy aside, recognized that there's something wrong with him? He is unable to relate to human beings. You can see that in a person if you've ever met like an actual psychopath, a person who genuinely cannot connect with other people. You can see it when you interact with them. Why did they not recognize that in him and take him aside and say, look, you got to fake it. You got to fake it or you're not going to be able to function in society. Like, you're not going to make it unless you learn how to pretend to act like everybody else. And this is how you do it. They didn't do that. They just let him sort of kind of figure it out on his own, which he did very badly. And then they get mad at him because he failed. But nobody ever pulled this kid aside and was like, look, you're missing something that everybody else has. Let's teach you how to fill in this gap, fake it, and then maybe later on in a decade or so, if you do this long enough, you might feel something. Kind of like a Dexter situation,
But how much of that has to do with the time period that this is written in?
Oh, for sure.
And how much of it is also the Japanese behavioral expectations?
Both. Absolutely both. Because it's set in the 40s, right?
Yeah,
so,
So I don't know if psychopath was really that much of a diagnosis then. And that's also a Western diagnosis.
Yes. Yeah. The lack of ability to connect to other human beings is a human thing. It's not a cultural thing. The recognition that we can teach people to sort of overcome it and teach them to function anyway, even though they lack empathy. I think that might be a Western thing, and it's certainly a modern thing.
Mm-hmm. Then we get into chapter 2, where he has gotten better at lying, and he's getting along and making people laugh in school. People fell for who he is pretending to be, and he figures as long as he's making them laugh, then they won't notice anything is wrong with him. It also pretty much works. There was but one person who called him out on it not working and knowing that he was faking, and this kid's name was Takeichi.
Yeah, his first and only childhood friend.
I was like, this is BS. Hey, thank you, Alex. Time for the tater mash propaganda. Discerning hobos agree. Best liquor that you can reach from your knees. Tater mash. So Takeichi and Yozo, with Takeichi, Yozo felt like he was betrayed because this guy was like, I know that something is wrong with you. And so he remained very wary of this man from then on. And because he was wary, he tried to befriend Takeichi to keep him even closer, because you got to keep the people that you don't trust closer than everybody else to make sure they don't betray you.
Yeah, it was one of those things, like he was hamming it up in class, and he sort of, because he was the class clown, he sort of did this like tumble fall thing and sort of let everybody laugh at him, and sort of got up and bashfully brushed himself off. But the kid comes up and he goes, I know that wasn't real. And he freaks out. He's like, oh no, my whole life is over. He's like 6, you know?
And also, like, there's a point in here, because you're talking about how much he notices that Takeichi is onto him. And he's like, I got to do everything I can to make sure that Takeichi doesn't out me to anybody. Yeah. But he also recognizes that killing Takeichi had never occurred to him at that time.
Oh, okay. So that to me, he made a statement, and I was trying to find the page before we started, and I couldn't find it, but he made a statement regarding that, where he basically said, it never occurred to me to kill another human being, because to me, killing someone is releasing them from the torture that is life. And I would never allow them that release, or something like that. And it just, to me, encompasses like his entire personality in a single sentence. You know?
But you would rather make sure that Takeichi just remains suffering than to make sure that Takeichi doesn't out him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and I'm saying chapters, but this book is actually broken into like 3 notebooks. Or 3 or 4 notebooks, but I wrote them in my notes as chapters. That's just all that it is.
Yeah, it's like childhood, and then like middle grade / young adult, and then like college aged.
I mean, first wife and then second wife.
Yeah, but they're kind of like towards the end of college. The book ends when he's 27, so he doesn't really get through life very far.
No, he doesn't. He does look 40 by the time he's 27, though.
Don't we all?
It's true. So one time when hanging out with Takeichi, they got caught in the rain. Back at Yozo's house, he offered to take care of Takeichi. I wrote this one down because it seemed fairly important. Takeichi got a bit of the worst of it and kind of got sick from it. And impressed by Yozo's hominess, because Yozo was like, let me take care of you. Obviously, because they're friends and he's also covering. Takeichi said that girls would really like Yozo someday. And this freaks Yozo out because he does not want girls to like him.
Well, he doesn't want anybody to like him, really.
No, but he's like, this is specifically a curse.
Yeah, you've cursed me. Yeah.
You put a curse on me. Girls are going to dig me. Was it Takeichi that was the one that was, no, it was here. It was his other friend. It was his communist friend that said here.
Hiroko?
Horiki,
that's it.
Yeah, I was going to get there. I was like, one of them was like, girls are going to love you and you're going to be a great artist. And I can't, was it Horiki?
Yeah, that was Takeichi.
Yeah. Okay, that was Takeichi. So then later he's complaining about how only half of the 50, or only half of the predictions that Takeichi made.
The worst part came true, and the better part, didn't. Yeah.
Oh, none of us ever become the great artist. Okay. He also says how women are easier to please or understand because they'd laugh easier at his jokes and longer, and they'd laugh longer than the men. And so women just also liked him. I think that's probably because he is described as fairly attractive. Like probably more than fairly attractive. So the girls are probably laughing to get his attention because he was cute. But they were foreign to him and he didn't understand their emotionalness at all. And we'll continue to see this when he's just like, I don't get women.
So his interaction with all of womankind. I have this. Is it cool if I like read this?
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
So I'm on page 52, and he basically says, long personal experience has taught me that when a woman suddenly bursts into hysterics, the way to restore her spirits is to give her something sweet. So basically, like, anytime a woman's upset, he's just like trying to shove sweets in their mouth, trying to get them to calm down. Because women are gumball machines, apparently.
He's telling them jokes and he's giving them gifts when he's upset, and then he's like, why do all the women like me?
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine women liking you when you like listen to them when they're upset, you comfort them, you give them something sweet to eat. You know, I mean, I wonder why they like you.
He did, despite how he hated everything else, he did enjoy making art, but also worried that people would look at his art and misunderstand what he was doing, and thus misunderstand him in his most vulnerable state, which, as I feel like as authors and artists, we can all be like, I don't want people to look at this and read this wrong. He eventually moved to Tokyo, where he was put in school by his father to become a civil servant, regardless of how he wanted to be an artist. And he couldn't stand the communal living because it was gross and he didn't like sharing space with other people. So he skipped the dorms. There were too many
people having sex.
Oh,
it was very uncomfortable.
That's fair.
Much too much sex.
That's fair, though. I'd be like, I don't want to live in the dorm either, Dad.
Right?
I've heard horror stories of other people sharing dorms and their roommate having sex in the bed next to them. I'm so glad that I've never... I didn't have to deal with that.
I did, and it's not inaccurate.
No, not worth it. So he skipped the dorms and he went to live in his dad's townhouse with a note from the doctor saying that his lungs were at risk, which also is fair because he had a note as a kid that he had a compromised immune system and he got sick easier and he was a sickly child. So living in his dad's townhouse, he would also often skip school and go to do art classes instead because he did not want to be a civil servant and he was pretty much on his own. Eventually, go ahead.
Oh, so this is like one of the only things in his life that he's ever actually wanted for himself was to like do art, to be an artist. And he's so mild and so timid and so intimidated by the idea of engaging in conversation with another human being or expressing his own desires in any way. He is utterly incapable of telling his father, I want to go to art school. And so instead gets enrolled in business school to be a civil servant. This guy who like cannot talk to other human beings is going to school to be a civil servant. Well,
you know, maybe it could break him out of it by forcing him to do things. But
clearly it was an effective strategy.
not when you don't got a chaperone. I mean, I guess that it was fine because he went and had a lot of success with the communists.
He was very likable by the communists. Yes, they were.
They were like, here, do the books. Here's all of our secrets. Manage our money.
Yeah, run all the errands all day long.
Also, not surprising that all the communists pushed all of the work off onto one person. Eventually, Yozo meets a man named Masao Horiki, who introduces him to cigarettes, prostitutes, drinking, and left-wing thought. That's how it's described in the book. This man was also an artist. He appreciates Horiki for who he was, and though thought Horiki was a good man who would help him personally and find his way around Tokyo, because he was still new to Tokyo. He didn't know where he was going.
That is not what I got out of that at all.
But that he was like, okay,
that he liked him. No. So what I got out of that was that Yozo fully thought that Horiki was an idiot, fully intended on using him to learn how to navigate the city. Like, that's what I got out of it. I did not get out of it that he thought Horiki was a good man at all.
I don't think he thought Horiki was a good man, but he thought that he could get along well enough with Horiki.
Yeah, he could tolerate him and he was useful. A useful idiot.
Yeah. So like on the scale of like on Yozo is different than our scale of like. He did not enjoy being around him, but he did find companionship. He went to Horiki a couple of times, but they were both also using each other.
It's shocking how easy it is to get along with somebody when you're blackout drunk every time you interact with them.
See, that also affects how you like them because you're like, I am just cigarettes, prostitutes, and drinking when I'm around this guy.
For sure. Introduce him to the good life on Yozo's dime.
And so, God, he trusted him well enough, which, you know, if you're getting blackout drunk and doing cigarettes and prostitution, you trust someone okay. Horiki Hariki introduces Yozo to prostitutes who really like him. The prostitutes freaking love Yozo, probably because he listens to them.
And he gives them money. They just ask for money and he just gives it to them. No action required. Just, can I have some money? Yeah, here.
You can just leave me alone. And also a bunch of random girls that he's introduced to also like him. We get a lot of Yozo is introduced to a lot of people through Hariki, and all of the chicks like Yozo, and he gets a lot of secret admirers just by being the way that he is.
I thought that the thing with the prostitutes was really interesting because he basically relates to them and he views himself as not human or subhuman almost. He doesn't use that term, but it feels like that. And then he also views the prostitutes as outside humanity as well. And I think it's interesting that he describes them as wanting nothing from him, because to Yozo, a financial transaction is not a demanding thing. It is the emotional investiture that he finds taxing. And I thought that was really interesting.
That is really interesting, especially I saw some of the other opinions going around on this, and they were just accusing Yozo of being a misogynist because specifically of the way that he treated the prostitutes. And I'm like, I don't think so, though, because he's just uncomfortable with humanity in general.
Yeah.
But he's more comfortable with the prostitutes than the other people because, like you said, they don't demand an emotional investment.
They don't want anything from him other than something that has no value to him anyway, which is money.
Yeah. So then Hariki introduces Yozo to the Communist Party through a reading meeting, and he buys a booklet. The communists then grow to like Yozo because he is easygoing and thoughtful and made them all laugh because he's just, a crowd pleaser. And again, it was Yozo just playing the game that he thought, it was Yozo just playing the social game and thought that their fretting over communism and Marxism was missing something. Like, he's like, they're not entirely wrong, but they're also not very right. And it's also kind of stupid that they're freaked out about the money like this because it doesn't really matter. Kind of like going back to the prostitutes with the money. Money really doesn't matter.
Right. Like why are you fluffed up about this thing? Like, you either have it or you don't. Why do you care? And also I thought it was interesting that he was almost like making fun of them for acting like they were all super spies, like that the government was going to come down on them any moment, and they were all acting like they were in fear all the time, and really nobody even knew that they were there or cared.
I think it was, and I won't say mildly entertained, but I think it was just like, these people.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Observing them was very different to him as opposed to the other people. Like you're saying, they thought they were the secret spy thing that was going to get cracked down on, and it was just like, you're fine.
Nobody cared. But it reminded me of, the Emperor's New Groove and the like big bodyguards like up against the wall, like doing his own spy music, like do do do. That's what it reminded me of.
So he bonds with the communists over irrationality, and actually is like, we have the irrationality thing kind of in common, but also in different ways. So not really, and they're kind of more irrational than I am. There was I didn't save the quote, but there was a quote in there about their irrationality that I thought was fun, or good explanation of what he thought of the communists.
Yeah, I find it hilarious that like all of this time, the whole book, he's like, I'm a horrible person. I have lived a life of shame. These guys are fucking weird. I'm an asshole.
Yes. That's the running monologue of this character. And at this point, that's one of the things I liked about this quote too, is while he's talking about irrationality, he says the one thing that really, really frightened Yozo was the logic of the world.
I think because he understood that there was a logic to it, but he never quite understood it. Like, there's almost a mechanical logic behind the way that humanity as a monolith functions.
Yeah.
And he was always just a little bit off kilter from that. His gear didn't slot in quite right.
Yeah. How much of that do you think played into him being so much of a spectator of a lot of things?
Almost all of it. I am naturally very shy. I have learned in my 40 years on this planet to sort of learned ways to get over it and to engage, even though it's not natural for me. And one of the things that I have to remind myself is participate, because the world is going to go on without you. And nobody ever told Yozo that. Nobody ever told him, if you don't engage with other people, they're just going to keep living their lives. Like, they're not bothered that you're not there. The only person bothered is you. You are the one making you outside. And nobody told him that. Understand, 1940s Japan. Nobody's going to say that anyway, But yeah, it felt very like self-inflicted isolation and self-inflicted loneliness. And that's one of the things that makes it so tragic.
We get on to, he also mentions how he feels certain affections for social outcasts because he is one, and the communists are also social outcasts. Despite how he never agreed with the Marxists, he was given a lot of power and responsibility from them and their club because they liked him and they trusted him.
Yeah, it's miraculous how much people like you when you do everything for them.
Well, he just apparently also probably has a decent smile because he's been practicing just blending in with people and making them laugh, and so he's trustworthy and handsome.
Yeah, lots of practice with his big cheesy grin.
It's not
doesn't really understand why he's smiling. It's just like his default face when he doesn't know what to do.
Like, we're not dealing with Takeichi, okay? Nobody knows. His dad then sells the townhouse that he was living in, and he had to go work out his own living situation. He was given an allowance, but it was never enough for his needs, so he went to a pawn shop and the like while neglecting his school and his art. Then the Communist Party was getting him to do more and more stuff to the point that he didn't even have time for himself or to do anything that he wanted to do, and he was beginning to become overwhelmed by having to handle everything on his own. So we start, like, he was having some level of, like, kind of getting along.
Yeah.
And then the responsibility landed on him, and he was like,
yes.
I can't do this anymore.
And then someone expected him to act like a grown-up, and it all fell apart.
He then goes over a couple different women who were interested. Oh, yeah. The narrative goes over, I had these 3 admirers. I have my notes kind of weird. So he talks about these 3 different women who were interested in them. One of them was his landlord's daughter. Another was a communist girl, and a teacher in training whom he spent the night with in one of the communist training rooms. And then the third he got the attention of was a waitress. He was no longer needing Hariki to guide him around town, and the waitress didn't demand anything of him and made him feel comfortable because of that. Like, I think she just brought him tea and what he needed while he was at the cafe.
Yeah.
And there were just no demands. It was very transactional. And so he was like, okay.
Yeah, you sit here. I'll have the comfort of you not bothering me. You'll have the comfort of me not bothering you. I'll give you tea. You keep your mouth shut. We'll be fine. Yeah. I think she also, like, related to his sadness, though.
Yeah. He mentions how he has a hard time listening to women because they don't know where to put the emphasis in the stories to make him care. They just talk a lot. That's what he got from her. He was like, she'll sit down and she'll just talk about her day. And instead of being like, oh, that's what it was. Even saying, he was like, if she just said, I am so unhappy, then he's like, I'd be invested. But then she goes on this super long story and never says that I'm unhappy and wants me to infer things. And I just don't care.
Yeah. I'm incapable of inference because I'm not listening to you.
Just be straightforward. Just tell me. Get more sympathy as a long tail. It's like if you're talking about, so my dad did this to me today and blah, 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 blah. And you're just upset. Just say that you're upset. Don't tell me about your dad. Just say you're upset and I'll care.
It's really funny though, because, he makes that point, but like, that is a thing. Like, when you see a group of women like talking socially to each other, it's all very sort of storytelling and this long drawn out, like, I'm trying to weave a tale and get you invested emotionally. And like, that's how women in general communicate with each other. Obviously there's exceptions, but like in general, women will storytell, and men in general are just like, I'm pissed off. And it's like, okay, I can relate to that. I know what that means,
Maybe that's my problem, because I always try, when I talk to like my sister, when I've talked to other people, I've been like, okay, so this is my emotion. This is why. And then they always take it very personally. Like, I don't get into the story. I just go, how can we fix this?
Yeah. Yeah. You're trying to fix it. They don't want you to fix it.
I'm way too direct.
They just want to tell you about it. They just want to vent. They don't want you to fix it.
But so that makes sense. See, look, I feel for you. So that's what I do. I'm like, I don't care about your big long story unless I like you. If I'm invested in you, I will listen and I care about your day. But if otherwise, I'm like, I want to fix your problem. If you're upset, tell me you're upset so we can fix it.
Well, see, I'm the same way though. Like, you've come to me and told me this thing is broken. Why would you do that if you didn't want me to help you fix it? Like, what's the point of this conversation? Why are we talking? Can I go have some lunch now? Like, I get told all the time I communicate like a man. All the time.
I feel you. So he sleeps with this woman and felt liberated by doing so. It said that he felt liberated by sleeping with this woman, even against her misery. He still doesn't understand how women can live the way that they live, and the waitress made him feel things that scared him exponentially. So he stayed away from her and returned to Hiroki. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, because then she wanted emotional investment. Like, the second anybody wants any emotional investment or any type of mutual interaction, Yozo's out. It's too much. He can't handle it. Because the only person that Yozo knows or cares about is Yozo.
He needs to stick with the prostitutes. Because you're like, you sleep with the woman, and the woman's like, so we're serious now? And he's like, oh, nope. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
What do you mean you want me to actually feel something? I am out of here.
I'm going to go back to that guy over there. He eventually meets and gets married to a woman named Tsuneko, who was later raped by Hiriki, right? That was my takeaway. While Yozo was secretly watched.
Did you skip the lady with her little girl?
No, that's later.
Oh, I don't remember her. I don't remember her at all.
Let's see.
Yeah, I don't remember her. There were too many women. There were a lot
there
of
were
women.
A couple of women.
It's like a revolving door of women. Like,
he has to keep trading them out because he wants the sex without the emotional attachment. So he has
you know what's really funny? I don't even know that he wanted the sex. Like, I don't even, like, you get the impression that he sleeps around quite a bit, but I don't even know that was so much what he was after as...
Well, there was this transaction. I think he knew he needed to do something to blend in.
Yes.
And it might have also been an attempt to try to be normal.
Yes. He knew that there was something missing, but he never could quite figure out what it was. And so he kept like trying on different shoes and none of them fit. And he's getting frustrated, but he keeps trying on different pairs of shoes, you know?
And we're still like, he's like 21 or 22. He's in his late 20s over here because maybe
so
even just
according
19.
to Yozo, women are both gumballs and shoes.
Hey, look, he tried different social groups too. He went all around.
He did, yeah. He got around.
So later, he and Tsuneko are eating when he opens his wallet to pay and finds out that he doesn't have much money in it. Ashamed of himself and his failure, he and Tsuneko throw themselves into the sea. That's who this Tsuneko was, the one he threw himself into the sea with.
Right. So I did not get the impression that Hiriki assaulted. Well, assaulted, yes, but not penetratively. Like, he was like mauling her, like pawing her and like licking all over her face. And pissed. Yeah.
So then it might have just been pawing and groping.
Yeah.
But I still wrote it in here that there was some sort of
it's still assault.
Sexual assault to some level.
Yeah, she still wasn't into it, and he wasn't taking no for an answer. It's not good.
So since they're poor and they can't even pay for their meal, and there's so much shame from him not being able to take care of himself or take care of her, they decide that they're going to do their suicide pact and they just throw themselves in the sea rather than, talking to their families, because also Yozo doesn't want to tell his dad how much of a failure that he is right now.
Yeah, I got that as sort of a, what's it called when like, young people are particularly prone to it when you've got one young person who's like, I am having this like emotional crisis, and then like all of their friend group starts having the same emotional crisis, and then the whole school is having that emotional crisis, and it's
the
like
social contagion.
That's it. Yes. So I got the impression that they were sort of feeding each other's misery by validating it.
I could see that.
Yeah, like it's okay that you feel this way. I feel this way too. Let's go be miserable together. And oh, by the way, do you want to jump off a cliff? And I expected him to back out. I thought his ego would get in the way and he'd back out, and he didn't.
Nope. She dies. He doesn't.
She dies. Yeah.
He somehow survives the fall. He's institutionalized and then threatened with actually being disowned by his father, because, the only thing more shameful than suicide is committing suicide and surviving.
Well, it's not just institutionalized. It's illegal to commit
suicide. That's coming next. I'm getting through it, because then as he's being institutionalized, because I'm like going through it kind of as it happens. So as he's being threatened to be disowned, he's also taken to the police station and charged with assisting a suicide.
Yeah.
And a cop on the night watch asks him what happened, and he makes something up that's believable because he's so charismatic and he's bored that night, and he wants to see if the guard is going to believe whatever story he tells.
Because that's how he functions. When in doubt, just lie and smile.
And the guard believes him. And the guard is like, just tell that to the DA and you'll get off just fine.
Uh-huh.
And then he goes to the police station for the real interrogation the next day, where he charms them too and basically tells the story that gets him off. He also went to the DA and embarrassed himself by lying, where that guy was like, I could tell that you're lying.
Yeah, that guy was Takeishi as an adult, like basically just like, what are you doing? Like, is that even real? Did that even really happen? Like, what's wrong with you?
I almost wonder if like every time he passed, he like embellished more.
You know, I also got that impression, and I think that if you've ever interacted, I think most of us have at this point, you know, interacted with somebody who's just a chronic liar. Like they're always embellishing something, and it always like it just gets bigger and bigger, and they just sort of like push until they start to bump into resistance, and that's when they stop.
Yeah.
So, you know, I got that impression too.
So unfortunately, you know, the DA caught him. And then he had to wait for his guarantor to arrive, which was his landowner.
Flatfish.
Flatfish. His renter or whatever. So I've lost the word, but landlord. That's the word I wanted.
Well, it wasn't his landlord at the time. It was the guy who had vouched for him to get into a school, who happened to have been a friend of his father's. And he's so disconnected from his own family. He can't even call his dad or write a letter to his mother or anything. He calls this other like adjacent person, this friend of his dad's, and has him come and like sign basically like you do when you post bail, like I'm responsible for this person if they do anything stupid. I'm responsible.
I mean, if his father was threatening to disown him over the suicide, then I'm not really surprised he didn't call his dad, but I'm also surprised like he didn't feel comfortable calling his brother. Because his brother
anybody else
in for him, like just anybody. You just got this random where like we've never known really who is Flatfish. He just came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, but you
have more of a relationship with this guy than you do with your brothers, to the point that you're calling him for the guarantor.
That's the thing. That's what's important is this man has gone through 21, 22, 23 years of life at this point. He has no one. The only person that he's related to, two people. He's had two like actual friends plus Horichi, who doesn't really count because he doesn't like Horichi, and Horichi doesn't really like him. They just go drinking together. But he's had one friend during childhood that he completely lost touch with after childhood. And then he's got like Flatfish, who doesn't like or respect him. And he's just kind of like leeching off of him.
And who knows if Flatfish only came because that the daughter, the landlord daughter, was a different landlord. I was like, because there was the landlord daughter that had a crush on him.
No, different guy.
I don't know. He probably could have called one of his prostitutes and been like, hey, can you come and be my guarantor?
You know what's really funny? He probably could have, but because he viewed them as like furniture rather than people, I don't think it ever would have occurred to him to do it.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So now we're in notebook 3, and Yoso says only one of Takeichi's, this is where he's like, only one of Takeichi's predictions came true, and it was the worst one. He's very popular with the women.
Much to his dismay.
much to his terror. His landlord is somewhat paranoid that he'll commit suicide or attempt suicide again after what happened. And he's mostly been cut off from his family. So he's being lectured, and he's being lectured on the regular by Flatfish's 17-year-old possible illegitimate son.
Yeah. Yeah. This young kid comes in and like tells him how the world works. And Yoso has no spine. And is completely unable to just tell him to shut up.
This kid is like left in charge of the antique shop or the pawn shop, whatever it is that Flatfish has. It's his one stationary business over there. And he's just, Yoso probably comes down from his room and the 17-year-old is like, freaking get it together. What is wrong with you? Also,
what's wrong with you? Get a job.
Like, you should be a businessman by now. What's wrong with you? He's mostly not invited to do anything with Flatfish and the possibly illegitimate son. Like the two of them just have dinner together all the time, but they don't invite. See, is he even just a landlord? He's just in a room. It sounds like he was just boarding in the house.
Yeah, he's a boarder, basically. Yeah.
But when I initially read it, and now that I'm going through it again in my head, I'm like, I thought that he had rented like a side room or something, but he was
not
just
giving him any money. No,
he was just staying in a
he's
like
just
a guest
mooching
room.
off of him. Yeah, he's contributing nothing and like taking food and utilities and like staying there. He doesn't have a job. He has no income.
Look, he was a regular at the communist meetings.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep my opinions on those political things to myself.
That's fair.
Lest I get you demonetized.
That's fair. I am just making jokes at the expense of the book, okay? Flatfish tells Yozo that there will be no sentence for him assisting his own wife. Oh yeah, because the police get back to him and they're like, so yeah, you're let off the hook. You're not going to have to do any community service or go to jail or anything for assisting your wife in suicide, but you do have to do some rehabilitation. But it's going to be all on you.
Assist her though. Like, it's not like he pushed her or anything. He just went with her.
He was like, let's do it though. But I don't know what the laws are with Japan,
like
suicide assistance.
Yeah, well, we don't really have that here, not like that anyway.
You can kind of, depending on where you're at here in the trial, you can be charged if you're like egging somebody on to commit suicide.
For sure. But I think it was more the other way around, but not like Yozo would ever tell them that because he's incapable of arguing for even to defend himself.
Well, see, what if Yozo was not actually suicidal and just did it because she wanted to do it and that's why he survived?
Is that your excuse, peer pressure?
No, but I'm thinking of like in the earlier scenes where he was like just going with what other people wanted and expected of him. Sure. And there are parts in here where he talks about he doesn't know what to do with himself and he prefers it when people just tell him what to do.
Yes.
So what if he just jumped off the thing, never intending to commit suicide, and that's why he survived?
I mean, he knew that that's what would happen. Like, it's not like he didn't know when he jumped off that they were going to die. Like, that was the plan, but like, it wasn't his plan. It wasn't his idea. It was a thing she said, do you want to? And Yozo, being Yozo, just was like, yeah, sure, why not? Because that's how he goes through life.
Friday night.
Yeah, why not?
I could jump off
a random Tuesday, sure.
So Yozo appears frustrated and disappointed, blaming Flatfish for the bad things that would follow after this. He's sort of commenting on what the future is going to be right now. Going, bad things are going to happen to me, and it's all Flatfish's fault. Because Flatfish didn't tell me what to do. And instead said, bring your problems here, and we'll try to figure it out like adults.
Yeah. So he gets mad because Flatfish wants this grown-ass man to act like a grown-ass man. And is very insulted that Flatfish didn't just tell him, like, this is how you fix your life. That he actually wanted him to, put in the work.
Look, Yozo, your dad was like, go become a businessman. And you were like, no.
Nah.
No.
Nah.
I think
just send me an allowance.
I think you can figure this out. He's also really blaming Flatfish for not straight up telling him that the cost of college would be paid for by his family. Oh yeah, there was a section in there where he's basically said if he continued going to college, then Yozo's family would continue paying for the college. But Flatfish didn't tell him that. No. Because Flatfish wanted him to come up with his own solutions of what he wanted to do.
He wanted him to actually take responsibility and act like a grown-up. Unfortunately, Yozo's incapable of doing that.
Well, you don't have to take responsibility. If you put the responsibility of your life on everyone else, then you go, it's your fault that my life sucks.
Yeah, clearly Flatfish ruined his life. I don't know what you're talking about.
Flatfish and that stupid 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Instead, he had said, ask Yozo what he wanted, and Yozo not able to conceive of I want, or at least to vocalize what I want because he's got no spine. Like you said, he was lost and blames Flatfish for all of the bad things. When he tells Flatfish that he wants to be a painter, Flatfish then judges him and he feels shame. He does eventually say what he wants, but Flatfish is like, no, that's a loser choice.
Yeah, it's the only thing, literally the only thing he has ever actively wanted in his life. And not only is he incapable of telling most people, but the one time he actually says it out loud, dude laughs at him. Like,
he goes, make better choices.
Most of Yozo's misery is self-inflicted, but in that instance where he finally
is honest.
Yeah, he finally works up the courage to speak his mind and to speak his heart, and he just gets shot down so mercilessly, and you're just like, no.
Imagine how it could have happened if the guy was like, okay, let's see what we can do about this.
Yeah, well, Or told
it's
him
not
that
like
he'd
there's
just be given
our
money if he'd get his ass back in school. Either way, it's Flatfish's fault.
Not well, yeah, but still, if we could just think about like the encouragement in somebody's life, especially because with Japan, you can get good jobs as an artist.
I don't know a lot about Japanese culture, but I'm fairly certain that encouraging people who are making financially ruinous decisions is not part of it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you are correct, but also I'm thinking with my brain and going, this guy's life could have been different though, with encouragement in a different direction.
Yeah, just duct
I'm
tape.
not thinking legitimately of any cultural differences. I'm just like, just think of the difference you could make though.
Just duct tape his self-esteem back together. He'll be fine.
he could. Let's see. So Yozo writes a letter saying that he's going to a friend's house. Because he's so ashamed of Flatfish dissing on him wanting to be an artist. So he's like, I'm going to go to a friend's house. Here's the address of the friend's house. We're going to discuss what my future plans are. He gives the name of Hariki. He gives Hariki's name and address. And then he flees, and he's not actually going to Hariki's house. Surprise.
Because it's the only person whose name and address he actually has, because again, the man has no friends. The one person that he had any, actual bond to jumped off a cliff. So
and so he embellished. Let's see. He's not even a liar if he embellishes. He also, he says he's not a liar. He makes the excuse for himself. He says he's not a liar if he embellishes sometimes because he doesn't lie for personal gain. So it doesn't count as lying.
I don't get anything out of it, so it doesn't count.
It's like those other people over there, they will lie for free food. I am just lying to walk away.
Yeah,
so it doesn't count as a lie.
I'm lying to emotionally disengage, so it doesn't count because it's not for selfish reasons.
This is it. I put in my notes up there that I was like, I wrote down the quote for this specifically. It's a lot of words to say that you're a liar. So one of my tragic flaws is the compulsion to add some sort of embellishment to every situation, a quality which has made people call me at times a liar. But I have almost never embellished in order to bring myself any advantage. It was rather that I had a strangulating fear of that cataclysmic change in the atmosphere, the instant the flow of a conversation flagged. And even when I knew that it would later turn to my disadvantage, I frequently felt obliged to add, almost inadvertently, my word of embellishment out of a desire to please, born of my usual desperate mania for service.
Yozo's impression of himself and my impression of Yozo do not always line up, and this is one of them.
What that he doesn't, that his lying is not a big deal.
Completely self-serving. It's completely self-serving.
Oh, yeah.
He wants people to like him because life is easier when people like you, but he doesn't know how to make them like him, like honestly, so he just lies.
That specific quote tells me that when he was at the DA, he definitely saw how far he could stretch the truth.
For sure. It's like, what can I get away with? If I tell you a bigger story, will you like me that much more? Can I get out of this conversation as soon as you like me? Like, people will be more lenient with him if they like him. So he smiles and he plays the clown and he tells these fantastical stories, and everybody knows he's lying, but they don't care because he's fun, because he's the smiley guy, he's the smiley junkie guy. And he just kind of goes through life staggering from one relationship to another in this drunken smiling haze. And he's very affable, but he has found that if he engages with people in that way, then they'll like him and he can just kind of skate by. He doesn't have to actually invest anything, and he doesn't have to actually engage.
Something of that also makes me think he understands people a lot better than he thinks, because in a way, I kind of imagine, since you have to imagine these conversations, since most of them aren't written out, but that he sees what people are responding to in his lies and then feeds them more of that, because he's that gets me a good response.
Yeah.
And so he understands how people work, but he doesn't know how to personally connect, because he's not really being himself. You can't connect with somebody when you're being a fake person.
No. Because
he just sees this disconnect of they feel something, but I don't feel something, but something is wrong with me, when the whole thing is because he's not being honest, but they think he's being honest.
Absolutely.
So he's a lot better at doing what he thinks he's doing, but he just doesn't understand or have the ability to reflect on what he is doing with other people. I
don't know that it's that he doesn't understand. I mean, he doesn't, but so here's my read on Yozo. Okay. I think he is a complete manipulator, but his ego will not let him accept that he is manipulative.
I could see that. Do you think that it ever changes on him?
that whatever changes on him.
That his ego ever comes down from not recognizing he's manipulative.
Sure, that's when he gets down on himself and he's like, "Oh, I'm a shitter. I'm a horrible person. I'm shameful. I'm awful." Like that's when it happens where he's like, you know, everything about me is a lie. All of my interactions with other people are false. All of these people think that they like me. They don't even know me. I am utterly alone. I think that that's what happens is basically like his ego like disengages for like a fraction of a second and he realizes who and what he is and it just breaks him.
I think he has more than a couple of those, but it mostly comes out with his art. Those are the moments when he's being his most honest, is when he's like, I want to pursue art or I'm doing art. Yeah. But then even that becomes destructive to him when he's doing art that he doesn't like.
Because he's doing art for money to please other people rather than because he likes it.
And it's just a continuation of the lie and taking the only thing away from him that he was going to be honest in and turning it into another lie.
Yep. It just puts up another layer of his facade. Absolutely.
So Yozo is going over. Yozo starts wandering around Tokyo because even though he said he's going to Hariki's house, he doesn't really have anywhere to go. He doesn't have anybody to talk to, and he doesn't want to go to Hariki's house. So he just kind of wanders around until he gets tired of wandering around. And then he goes over to Hariki's house because he's like, I don't want to wander around Tokyo anymore.
I don't want to go back to Flatfish's house. So he goes to like the only person he knows.
He spends like all day just walking around, and he's like, fine, I'll go to Hariki's house. Yeah. And he gets there and Hariki is like, what the frick are you doing here?
Yeah, he's not happy to see him. It's like, where have you been? Never mind, I don't care. Fuck off.
You know? He said he's like, go away. But then Hariki's mom comes in and is like, oh, why don't you have food with us?
Yeah, have some Jello.
And so then he sits down and eats the Jello. But then Yozo's also like, this is really disgusting. Like, I don't judge poor people, but also this is really disgusting.
Because he has never really suffered. Not really. He's never really been without. Somebody has always bailed him out.
Yep. And they've still, like, Flatfish has still fed him. And when he's been fed by Flatfish, it still wasn't this poverty level food that Hariki and his mom are eating.
No.
Which is like jam with not real fruit in it. Or like congealed fruit.
Yeah, well, they said jelly, and I took it to mean like the British version of jelly, which is like gelatin, like Jello.
Oh, okay. I was like imagining jam.
No. I'm pretty sure it's the British version.
I'm pretty sure you're right, but I'm not very worldly.
Yeah, you know, Jello with like little bits of canned fruit cocktails suspended in it, that sort of thing. That's what I got out of it.
See, I kind of imagine something that's very cranberry sauce from a canny, but like
either
with the nasty fruit still mixed in.
Either way, it's not good. It's not good. And Hariki and his mom are like so poor, and then his mom is just like insistent, like, no, sit down. We're going to give you something to eat. We don't have anything, but you'll take this. You must take this. It reminds me of people living in the South, man. Like, if you go to somebody's house, you have to have a drink. They're going to offer you some food. Like, even if they have nothing, they will offer you something, you know.
And you can't say no, because then you look ungrateful.
You have to take it. Yeah. You have to take it. It's rude not to. Yep. You're like, I don't know if I want to eat here. Sorry, I'm being a snob.
You're not being a snob, but I feel like, I mean, as a Westerner, I can only say so much, but I still feel like it's pretty typical in Japanese culture. If somebody says, hey, come and eat, you can't say no.
No, you have to. It's the same way in the Middle East. I lived in the Middle East for about a year, and it's the same way. Like, if you are offered food, if you are offered something, it's very, very rude to refuse. It is an insult to that person.
Yeah, so then Yozo just sits down and has to deal with this.
Yeah,
and so then
he has to.
So then he can't not eat it.
That's one of those things. Like, he claims to not understand social norms, and yet he practices them.
Yeah, well, he does. He does get
so
it. It's
completely not self-aware.
It's not a social norm issue he doesn't understand, because he gets along with everybody that he runs into.
Yeah,
but he doesn't empathize. He doesn't
connect. Yeah,
connect. But he understands all of it, just not on what's the word that I want. It's like an intellectual level or an emotional level. One of those two.
Yeah, there's no emotional human-to-human connection. There's no empathy for the fact that this is another human being who has their own struggles and their own difficulties and their own pain and their own pleasure. Like, he just can't imagine that anyone has the same feelings that he has, because they're just so intense and he can't handle them, and he's never really tried. So he's just imagining that he's this like other being, you know, And he's full of all this emotion. And of course, nobody else has them, because if somebody else had all of these emotions, well, they couldn't handle it.
Well, see, that just sounds like the existential crisis of a teenager where you're like, nobody understands me. I'm the only one that feels like this.
It sounds like Dead Skin Mask a little bit.
We can make some comparisons at the end of this.
He does actually say that, though. Like, hold on, just give me 2 seconds.
Dead Skin
Mask. We go. No. This is this one. He goes,
yeah.
I have sometimes thought that I've been burdened with a pack of 10 misfortunes, and any one of them, if borne by my neighbor, would be enough to make a murderer of him. So he thinks, like, if anybody else felt these horrible emotions that I'm feeling, surely they couldn't handle it. They would be a murderer. I alone can bear it, and therefore I am not like them. He thinks he's special.
Yeah, he does. But I've seen that same mindset in so many people where they go, I experienced this thing. I am special because I experienced this thing. But
it's
like,
so intense.
Go
you
talk
don't
to other
understand.
people.
Yeah.
Go talk to other people. You will find other people that experience the same thing as you. You're not special.
You're not.
If Yozo
I know you're really
one person, if he just told Takeichi that he felt like this, Takeichi would have been like, no. Or he would have been laughed at like Flatfish, and that would have made him like go further into his shell.
But if Yozo thinks that everybody's stupid. Yozo thinks everybody's stupid. So even if they're like, oh yeah, I feel that too, he's like, no, you're too dumb to understand. He thinks everybody's stupid.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It says, oh no, you're good. Like I said, interject away, because then it helps me not.
I get excited about books.
Me too. It's good. So as they're sitting down to eat, a woman comes in to buy art from Hariki because Hariki's got a job making art. And a telegram comes from Flatfish demanding Yozo return home. And the woman says her office is near where he lives, so she'll go with him. This is when we learn who that woman is. And this woman is Shizuko. And she comes to visit Hariki on the regular. She's 28. She's a widow with a 5-year-old daughter. You were talking about her earlier. This is her. And she commissions Shizuko to do cartoons for her tabloid.
He calls it a cheap rag. Like, he's so, it's the only legitimate work he has ever had as an adult human being, and he's still insulting her. It's so disgusting.
Are you talking Hariki or Yozo?
Yozo.
Yeah, he doesn't have that job yet.
Oh, well, he gets it, but he's like...
At first, he is kind of jealous that Hariki's got a job being an artist. And then eventually that's what gets him to talk to Shizuko, because he's like, I want a job being an artist. I like doing art. And then he starts doing the job. And then he's like, oh, I hate this. This is not what I want to be doing.
Yeah, I hate this. I hate your magazine. It's a dirty rag. It's cheap. I hate this job. I have to drink myself into oblivion just to make myself sit down.
Do the comics. This is what causes alcoholic cartoonists.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. You don't have to apologize. Interject away, lady. So Shizuko also more or less starts taking care of Yozu at this point, and he becomes more timid because she's like a strong woman. He even mentions in the book, she's a strong woman, knows how to take care of herself, knows how to take care of the child. And I think Yozo also likes that, because then he doesn't have to take care of himself.
He likes it because she tells him what to do in certain terms. She's very clear, go do this right now, go do it.
She can kind of treat him like another child. And since she's been the mommy of a 5-year-old, she's like, Yozo, go and do things.
Yeah, he's a man baby with a penis. It's fine.
So she takes over, and he also moves in with her as a man and wife, it says. Well, he breaks family ties. Oh, all of his family ties of dependency. So he's like broken off from his family now. He's broken off from Flatfish. He's just living with Shizuko, sort of pretending to be an adult, but really just being an extension.
No, he's just being a man baby in her house instead of a man baby in Flatfish's. It's fine.
He's got a job at least.
Is it really a job though, or is it just something he's doing to placate his girlfriend so that she'll keep paying for his food and alcohol?
I mean, yes, but also, I mean, there's a lot of question at the choice, but he's at least being slightly more productive. There are also still problems with what he's doing with Shizuko, which he recognizes later, which is how he ends up leaving Shizuko, which we'll get to in a second.
I think all through the time he was there, he was aware that he was using her. Mm-hmm. I don't think he had a problem with it, but I think he was aware that he was doing it.
Mm-hmm. So he tried to become more independent of Shizuko after she was taking care of him, but he kept getting more and more dependent, even though he tried to kind of do his own thing, until he couldn't escape anymore, and drawing comics for her publication made him so miserable that he cried over it while he was drinking. and he just hated all things about his life. Well, Shizuko's daughter takes to calling Yozo father pretty quickly. She also says that she prayed that she could meet her real dad one night while talking to Yozo, and Yozo's like, oh no, this girl is not my enemy, or is an enemy of mine.
Yeah, she's not my friend. Yeah.
I'm not good enough for her. Because people freak him out, but he also attracts people. The more he talks to people, and the more he talks to people, the more panicked he gets. But he sees that he's not truly accepted in this situation.
He basically gets dominated by a 5-year-old.
What happens? Hariki keeps using Yozo for his money. Oh, is that where all of Yozo's money is going for being a cartoonist?
I'm sorry, ask that question again.
Hariki keeps using Yozo's money.
Oh, yeah.
But they're hanging out during this whole time. So then that's where all of his cartoonist money is going. Is Hariki and Yozo are going out doing booze and cigarettes and prostitutes still, because it really doesn't matter that he's got a relationship with Shizuko. It's not really a relationship with Shizuko.
No, that's their whole the whole basis of his friendship with Hariki is that Hariki has no money. And so he like latches onto Yozo because Yozo always seems to have money, and then they can go out drinking. They don't actually like each other. It's just Yozo has cash and Hariki likes booze.
And Hariki's like, if you hang out with me, I can show you the ladies and the places to go.
Yeah, I show you all the ways to spend your money.
Yeah.
What a treat.
Just give me a cut like 70%.
What a good friend. Do you have 5 yen?
So this goes on until Yozo talks about how he needs to knock it off before society punishes him. And then Yozo realizes that society is made up of a bunch of individuals.
Yeah, shocker. There's other people around you, dude.
Like society isn't just this big monolith. Society is individuals.
Yeah. And they have thoughts and feelings all their own. Oh no.
Yozo gets more jobs drawing cartoons, and some of them are is this where he gets the pornographic job? Yeah. That he absolutely hates, but he keeps doing it so that he can get alcohol money because he needs to drink himself into oblivion because he hates so much, and it's his only way of escape.
Yeah, basically he starts drawing porn that gets more and more explicit because the more explicit it is, the more money they give him, and his drinking habit is so extensive at this point that he needs to draw these pictures even though he hates them because he thinks that they're very base and beneath him. Yozo thinks he's an awful person, but he also thinks that everyone in the world is beneath him. It's this really weird combination.
I can't do better because people suck, but also I'm a terrible person. I think he's got sections where he sees where the people around him are better than him, and that's kind of when he leaves. Yeah. He
bails when he realizes, like, oh, this is an actual human being that has like I'm not actually good enough to be in this situation. I better get out before they realize it.
Yeah. And I think then it also becomes a self-defense, because if he rejects them first, then they can't reject him. So he's still in control.
Absolutely. He doesn't want to give them the opportunity to see who he really is, because what if they accidentally stick around long enough and can actually see who he is? And what if they don't like him?
Yep. Not to make it about me, but there's a comment in one of the Bodymore books. I can't remember which one it is. I feel like it's the third one, where Joey says something like, the more a person gets to know you, the more personal it is when they decide to leave.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So I think Yozo's got that.
Yeah, for sure.
So even while he is with Shizuko and he's cheating on her, he sells off some of her belongings to pay for his alcohol habit because the hentai is not paying enough.
It's not just her belongings. He sells her clothes. Like her business suits that she has to use to go to work. Like, he sells her clothes to buy booze.
Yes. And he eventually sees how happy Shizuko and the daughter are as they're playing together, and that he doesn't fit into that picture. And that this is one of those moments where he sees they're better people than me and I don't belong here and I need to get out.
Yeah, like, they're actually happy without me. Why am I here?
And that he could end up ruining that. He does have a self-reflective moment here, being like, me being here and me selling their stuff and me doing this can ruin their lives. I need to go.
I think it's one of only 2 times that I remember in the book where he's self-aware enough and conscientious enough of other people having feelings that he's like, yeah, I better get out before I mess this up even further than I already have. I think he only did it twice, and that was one of them.
I think because he had it with her, and then he has it with his second
wife. Yeah.
His second wife. So he prays before he leaves that he finds happiness eventually, and then he is gone before he can mess anything else up. Then he lives and he works in the bar and copes with life. He's living, I think he's working for the bartender, doing random jobs and doing the comic still.
Yeah, like bar backing and that sort of thing. And he's like drawing in the bar, like at the bar table in exchange for drinks.
And he's befriending people at the bar and moving on to do cartoons and more porno mags. Eventually, he meets a nice girl named Yoshiko. This is going to be his second wife. And she takes care of him when he's drunk and tells him that he drinks too much. She's really concerned about his health and the way that he is. And she wants him to stop drinking so much. He's like 25 at this point.
Yeah, he's 25. She's 17, which, you know, whatever. I don't understand the culture well enough to comment on whether or not that's appropriate, but we get the impression that she is very like clean and naive and actually genuinely cares about him as a person, and he is so freaked out by that. Like, she basically uses niceness to bully him into a relationship.
It's true. So she's pure and she's nice, and he promises that he'll marry her, or she gets him to promise that he'll marry her if he stops drinking.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I won't overindulge again. But then like the next day he shows up and he's drunk and he's like, sorry, Yoshiko, can't marry you. I'm drunk. And she's like, you're not drunk. And he's like, I'm so drunk.
And she's like, nah, you wouldn't do that. You're too good of a person. You would never do that to me. So, and it's like, oh.
Do you think he was lying, or do you think that he was genuinely drunk?
No, I think he was genuinely drunk. And I think that she just refused to see it.
So since she refuses to see it, and she kind of still bullies him into the relationship, he takes her virginity, longing to see what it's like to take a virginity because he's never taken a virginity before. And then he only feels suffering because he feels really bad to have done that to her.
Yeah, because he's tainted the pureness of her.
And he knows
that's how people work.
Yeah, well, and he knows how nice she was to him, and then like what his goal was versus how she is, and that she had this emotional connection to him that he didn't have to her.
Yeah, she actually cared about his well-being, and he was just curious.
And like every other thing, he took advantage of, and then this felt more personal to take advantage of somebody for. So Hariki and Yozo are back together, wasting time at the bar as the bros do, while also being with Yoshiko and cheating on her continuously with the madame who owns the bar that he hangs out at. On a summer day, Hariki shows up at Yozo's door saying that he needs money to buy his summer suit back, and Yozo has Yoshiko sell off her clothes to give money to Hariki, and then uses the remainder of the money to buy gin.
Yeah. They're married at that point.
Yeah, they're married now.
Yeah, so he's married this girl.
Even though he said, you know, I'll marry you if I stop doing alcohol, but then it's all just alcohol. Everything is just alcohol.
Yeah, but she refused to acknowledge that he was drinking. So to her, he was not drunk. And therefore, he'd fulfilled his promise and they should get married.
Then he and Hariki are just talking about tragedy and comedy and antonyms and synonyms. I wanted to know what you thought of this section where Yozo says the synonym for women is entrails and the opposite of entrails is milk. And they're like talking about God and religion. And
it was all very masturbatory. It was all very like, you know, I felt like my brain out and have a wank with it, you know?
It did also feel like this is their drunk conversation. Yeah, I could see a couple of guys that were just blasted going, oh yeah, opposite of God, crime.
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't been that drunk that like I said, God, I can't remember. Anyway, I did a review recently for a self-help book. It may not have come out yet, but I basically said like this guy reminds me of like your teenage best friend when you're both partaking in illicit substances and he thinks he's like discovered the secrets to the universe, and then like you're so drunk you think he's right and maybe he has unlocked the secrets of the universe, and that's kind of what it reminded me of.
Yes. So they're so drunk and they're arguing about rice and crime because they're also waiting for like dinner.
Yeah, she's making beans.
There's so many beans. I was so distracted by the reference of beans. It just
I said the word beans like 15 times in 2 pages. It was really distracting.
So then Hariki blames Yozo for killing women and stealing money. Oh yeah, because Hariki's like, I'm a better person than you. You steal money and you killed your wife, you kill women. I'm a better person than you, Yozo.
Yeah, it's not a high bar.
But then Yozo doesn't think that he's a terrible person. And he also believes that Hariki's a terrible person.
Yeah, he's completely lacking in self-awareness, is Yozo.
But then he also looks at Hariki and is like, Hariki just sees me as a walking corpse because I survived a suicide attempt and I've lived past my expiration date. He's like, I know Hariki doesn't respect me. Hariki doesn't care about me.
No, because Hariki doesn't see him as a walking corpse. Hariki sees him as a walking wallet.
Well, he specifically in the text said that he was a walking corpse that lived past his expiration date.
Yes, for sure. But that's not why Hariki hangs out with him. He hangs out with him because he gives him money.
True.
He basically pays this dude to be his friend.
It's true. It's really but Yozo still recognizes that Hariki does not respect him as a person.
No, he doesn't.
And he still hangs out with him and drinks with him and lets him into his house.
The thing is, I don't know that he realized it until that scene, though. You know what I mean?
Think you're right.
Yeah, I think this whole time, like, he was looking down on Hariki, and that was the first time that he realized Hariki's looking down on him.
Well, and I think that's only because Hariki straight up said, "You're a murderer and a thief, and I'm better than you."
You're a bad
and so
guy.
That kind of like smacked Yozo in the face, and he's like, "Whoa, wait a second! You're not better than me. I'm better than you."
Yeah, but you're not though. Here's why.
So then they go downstairs to eat the food that Yoshiko was supposed to be making, but she's being raped in the kitchen by, was it their neighbor?
Yeah, it was the shop owner. They live above a shop. It was a guy from downstairs.
And so instead of doing anything, intervening or saying anything, Yozo kind of just stands there for a while and watches, and then he walks away, leaving his wife to be raped by this person.
He doesn't even like stand there and watch and run away. Like he stops for a sec. It takes him a second to realize what's going on, because I don't know that he's ever actually like recognized the difference between consent and non-consent. I don't think that that's ever occurred to him, that like that could be a thing. And then the second he realizes what's happening, he runs away. He abandons her. Yeah, it's more than just like walks off. Like he runs. He hides.
I think you're right that he doesn't understand the difference between consent and not consent.
Because I don't think he did till that moment.
He was hurt in that moment. And then later when he's talking to his wife and he sees how much it hurt Yoshiko, then he starts reflecting on it differently too.
Yeah, and recognizing like maybe she didn't actually want that.
Because I think it'll be in the notes too, is because he's looking at a bunch of magazines and books to be like, well, how are you supposed to deal with something like this? And he talks about how all of these books are saying something about if you can forgive your wife. But he's like, the wife Yoshiko's not the one that needs forgiveness in this situation. I'm not in a situation where she did anything wrong.
Yeah.
So I think that also helped to add to the idea that, like you said, he didn't understand consent versus not consent.
No, and I also don't think that he understood the cultural relevance behind it. I think that was one of the things that like helped highlight how disconnected he was from other people. You know, that he did not. I think in particular, a lot of men in that era would have looked at it as, what did you do to make that happen? Like, why would you do this thing to tempt this man in and betray me like that? And he just it never even occurred to him that's what happened.
So after that moment, eventually Yoshiko comes and finds him with dinner. Like, she's made dinner and she still comes to him with the dinner and sits down with him, saying, he told me that he wouldn't do anything. And so then Yozo says, it's all right. Don't say anything. You didn't know enough to distrust others. Sit down and let's eat the beans.
Yeah. Basically, it's not your fault. You were too innocent and too naive to understand that there was danger.
And he understands her character too. So he believes her, because he's always thought, even from the first day that he met her, that she was too pure.
For sure. Absolutely.
So the man who raped Yoshiko doesn't ever come back. And Yozo harbors a hatred for Hariki for not stopping the rape, even though he also had a chance to not stop the rape. But it's Hariki's fault.
But Yozo's not responsible for anything that happens to him. It's always someone else's fault.
Also, to be fair, I mean, there was some responsibility on Hariki, because Hariki was like, hey, you should go look at what's happening in the kitchen.
Right. So Hariki goes down first. He's like, I'm going to go check on these beans because I really want me some beans. And he goes to check on the wife and like sees that she's being assaulted by this stranger and like comes back up. And rather than being like, yo, your wife's in trouble, you better go help her, he's like, you want to see something cool? Really? Yeah.
So, there's actually some justified hatred for Hariki right there.
For sure.
Like, that doesn't stop Yozo from having his opportunity to have done something. But
it's almost like Hariki's like, yeah, I'm a better person than you because you killed a woman. Psych. You know?
Well, how much of his walking away? No, I don't want to give him that. I don't want to give him that because Hariki obviously walked away from this, and Yozo doesn't have the greatest way of knowing how to respond to this stuff. Hariki just walked away. Then he walked away.
Yeah.
But Yozo's also terrified of people, doesn't know how to interact with people.
Yeah.
And like you said, he ran away terrified because he didn't know how to interact with that.
He didn't know what to do with it, so he just ran. Yeah.
Yeah.
He does that a lot.
Yeah, yes, he does. So during the fallout and seeing how the rape affected Yoshiko, Yozo notices that his wife isn't acting like she normally would. He starts she's acting differently with him. She's more timid. She's more taken back. And so he starts reading books, trying to better understand what happened to her and how he can help her and how he can talk her through it. But what happened to her was just that she was too trusting and someone took advantage of her. And then she became very anxious of men.
This whole sort of montage of him going through and actually trying to figure out what happened and trying to help her put herself back together, like, that is the first time in his whole life that he has put forth effort on behalf of another human being. It's the first time. He's 25 years old, 26 at this point.
Yeah, he's in his mid-20s.
Yeah, and it's the first time he's ever actually invested in another person. Anybody, friends, family, anybody.
What do you think made Yoshiko different for him? That he invested in her and actually cared about trying to understand what happened to her?
How do I put this? I'm thinking of words. So I read it as he recognized that she was not just playing along with his jokes. She genuinely believed him. And he somehow recognized the difference between, oh, haha, you're so funny, flirt, flirt, and, oh, yeah, that's really clever. Like, he was able to recognize the difference that when he said, I'm not drunk, or I've been drinking, she was so naive and thought so highly of him that she could not believe that he would tell her the previous night, I won't drink tomorrow, and then go and do it. So, of course, he couldn't have because he said he wouldn't. Like, it never even occurred to her that he would, even though he knew the entire time, even when making the promise, that he would drink the next day. Like, he knew he was going to fail. And I think that something in him, and it wasn't stated explicitly, but I think that something in him recognized the difference between people who play along and go along with the joke because they're getting something out of it, and her who's just genuinely, openly, naively believing him and believing in him in a way that nobody else had.
If only he had told her that he wanted to do art, she probably would have been like, go for it.
I think that is absolutely true. I think that's true. I think if he had said, I want to be a proper artist, I don't want to draw pornographic cartoons, I understand that I'm good at it and this is how we pay our bills, but this is not who I want to be. I think if he'd actually had a real conversation with her, she would have been 100% behind him because she actually cared.
I think so too. I think she also saw in him the better person that she believed that he could be, which is what it started out with don't drink so much tomorrow. And that's all that she ever saw in him. And then I think there was a shock to his system too, when she started treating him with distrust because of what happened to her, that she could no longer treat him like with the best version of seeing himself.
Yeah.
Whether she wanted to or not, she had a physiological response and he couldn't be that person anymore.
Yeah. The brokenness in her adjusted the way that she was able to perceive him, and he could not be this paramount of virtue that she had always seen him as. And I think in some way he wanted to be that man, even though he understood that he couldn't.
Yeah. And then now he was the one that also broke her virtue because he's being treated with the same way that she would treat her rapist. Yeah.
He participated in it by sheer dint of the fact that he's also a man,
He probably could have gotten some reprise from it if he had stopped the rape and shown himself as a protector.
Yes.
I'm not saying there wouldn't have been no negative responses from her.
No, of course not. But when your husband walks in on you being assaulted by another man and then like turns around and runs away, that's gonna affect you.
Yeah, it is. That's what I'm saying. I think if he had stepped in, there would also be a different response. He could have lived up to the virtue that she saw in him by protecting his wife. It says many times in the books that he reads actually focus more on whether or not the husband could forgive his wife for committing the act. And he's lucky. He says that you're lucky if you're in the position that you have to forgive the person instead of it being nothing to do with forgiving her. He can't be mad at his wife because she did nothing wrong. And all she ever had about her was the virtue that he prized, which was immaculate trustfulness. That's what he described it as. So he blames himself for what happened to her, for not protecting her virtue, and for the way that she has deteriorated. Then he becomes an alcoholic again. Oh yeah, did he stop becoming an alcoholic during this time? A little bit?
I don't remember him not being an alcoholic.
I mean, he was hanging out with Hariki, but
he wasn't hanging out with Hariki as much. So
it sounds like he hit the bottle harder after that happened.
Oh yeah, for sure, because that's when he starts slipping into the injectables and stuff.
Yeah, oh, that's right. And he starts that's why I got that he's an alcoholic again, because he was getting really, really, really drunk, and he was trying to pull back because he couldn't stop himself. He goes to a pharmacy to try to get help.
Yeah.
The shopkeeper, the first person who had taken advantage. Oh yeah. And he's wondering if that shopkeeper was the first person to take advantage of Yoshiko, because surely with her trustfulness, he would not have been the first one to abuse Yoshiko's trust.
Right. I think it's fair to say, based on the way that she reacted to the situation, that that's probably the first time that that's happened.
I think so too. And I think he could infer that she's been taken advantage of in other ways.
But yeah, but not like that.
Time that it's happened like that. Yeah. When drunk, he has the courage to ask Yoshiko questions about what happened, because he hasn't actually talked to his wife about what happened to her yet. And he only has the courage to ask her. Yeah. But he has the courage to ask her when he's drunk, but it doesn't really go anywhere, obviously, because he's wasted.
Yeah, he's too drunk to articulate the questions appropriately. He is too much of a coward to ask her sober, and he's too much of a coward to deal with any of it sober. So he just gets himself so blasted drunk that even if they do have a meaningful conversation, he doesn't remember it the next morning because he was a coward.
After wandering home late at night, he stumbles into the kitchen for some sugar water and finds that enough sleeping pills in the kitchen to commit suicide, and wonders when he put those there. He attempts suicide shortly after and wakes up in a hospital with the bartender and Flatfish standing around him. He's crying and saying that he should go somewhere without women. Everyone agrees that, you should probably be stationed somewhere with no women, because things get worse when women are around you. Yeah,
clearly there's something about having a close relationship with a woman that makes you want to die.
Look, this is a very different situation than with Tsuneka, though.
Yeah,
I think the guilt overtook him, and his fact that he couldn't he couldn't figure out how to work with Yoshiko, and he couldn't deal with his alcoholism.
Yeah, but he's also incapable of actually having a real conversation with anybody. So nobody knows what's going on. They just know he's had another close relationship with a woman, and now he's tried to kill himself again. They don't know what's happening because he hasn't told anybody.
That's very true. Coming back from the hospital, Yoshiko believed that Yozo attempted suicide to atone for her sins. So she's so pure. She's such a good woman.
She's a good human being.
She still just believes that I have made you feel shame by having sex outside of marriage with somebody that wasn't my husband. And it's because of me that you committed suicide. Suicide.
Yeah, she's taken the responsibility on herself, whereas Yozo puts the responsibility on literally anyone else and is perfectly happy to let her do it.
And also she believes that he committed suicide because she'd become more withdrawn around him as well. So she blames everything just on her response to trauma.
Yeah, and he just lets her.
He disappears himself for a while at a spring. Oh yeah, he goes off to like a hot spring to try to figure things out.
Yeah, because what you need when your wife is reeling in depression after being raped is a vacation.
Yep. And he comes back sick, guilty, still feeling guilty. Yeah, I wonder why you're still feeling guilty, yo. So you haven't dealt with anything. And also kind of hallucinating. He also realizes that, because he's like hearing things and seeing things as he walks around, he also realizes his unhappiness comes from his own vices, and that he had no way of fighting anyone to resolve them. Like, he's like, I wish it was a person, because then I could go just take out the person and my problems would be over. But my problems are not a person.
Yeah.
He wonders if, this is also the moment where he wonders if he's an egoist.
Yeah. The first moment of self-reflection, and he just barely starts to unravel that his ego is this.
Am I the problem?
Could it be me? Yes, it could.
And so he seeks out help for his alcoholism and his possible egoism at a pharmacy where a woman eventually gives him morphine to help because, of course, the cure to alcoholism is morphine.
Yeah, that's definitely what you should do. Although we shouldn't laugh. It could have been a common way of dealing with it in the 40s.
It could have been. I am not a pharmacist. So
but yeah, definitely boys and girls do not treat your alcoholism with morphine.
Yeah, it only gets worse from here.
Yeah, it only gets worse.
I said you could suppose where that's going. Yozo feels really, really good on the morphine. Like his mood is so good. He's feeling happier. He's feeling better. He keeps going for more and more because the morphine while the alcohol makes him feel worse, the morphine takes him up.
Yeah, it numbs all the guilt he feels for running away when his wife was being raped.
Well, and not talking to his wife and all of the guilt that he still had from not talking to his wife and still running away and not dealing with his problems.
Still feels like shit, but he's fine, so everything's okay.
And she's still around. Don't you guys worry. She's still around.
Yeah, she's just like existing as a shadow in his house and like cooking and cleaning for him, and he just doesn't even care.
Because this guy, he gets addicted to morphine to the point that he is now having an affair with this old witchy-looking woman at the pharmacy so that he can get his morphine.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating. She is described as like an old, not good-looking person. Probably just how desperate he is for that morphine.
Yeah, I kind of read it that way too, that she gave him this thing that she knew would get him hooked, also knowing that he had no money and that like, oh, I have a way you can pay for that. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like, I feel like she got him addicted on purpose so that she could trade companionship for the drugs.
And then the woman keeps giving him the morphine and he's like, well, I feel like I have to take it because they expect me to be an addict and I have to fulfill people's expectations of me, right? I can't rightfully say that I'm not into morphine.
Like he couldn't refuse it. Like she's offering him this thing. Like who is he to refuse her? She clearly thinks he needs to have it, so he must take it. Like it's so dumb.
Like that's what he says. And he's also like, I don't want it. I don't want it to be this way, but I have to fulfill the expectations. So again, he's doing this other thing that he absolutely hates. And just as he's about to attempt suicide again, Hiroki and Flatfish show up and take him to the hospital in the woods, where those two and Yoshiko are hoping that he might recover. She gives him clothes and even a needle of morphine from the house because she thought the morphine was a medicine that he really needed to take care of himself. Yeah. She is so innocent. She doesn't even recognize that he is an addict and this is the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. She gives him his medicine and it's morphine. It's injectable morphine.
And he is still so endeared by her innocence and care that she shows him, even through all of this, and that she would not even know what that is. And he is surprised by his own ability to say no to taking that morphine at that specific time. And I think that part of it, he doesn't want to disappoint her at that specific moment.
It's her specifically, like anybody else, he's incapable, but he's made some kind of connection with her. And like, this book, it's hard, like I said, it's hard to say that you like it, but man, is it beautifully written.
Yes, it is.
It's just incredible. It really is. It's terribly depressing and it's an exploration of human loneliness, guys. Don't get us wrong. Like this is a really depressing book, but it is absolutely beautiful. It really is.
So after turning that down, he realizes that he has now been taken to an asylum. And he feels like he is no longer human because he's with all these lunatics. And once you're in an asylum, you will always be seen as a lunatic. You are branded insane for life. And so while he's felt like he's not human and separate from everybody else, now he's got the official brand that says you are not human anymore. You're a lunatic.
Yeah, there's a difference between feeling like you're outside of humanity and humanity viewing you as outside of humanity.
Well, especially when you're in a culture or a society that says other people's expectations or ideas of who you are is what you are.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. You are what we view you as, for sure.
So the next summer comes by and his brother appears to say that their father has passed away. I think it was cancer. Yozo also comes to live in the countryside to continue his recovery under his brother's watch, because I think that the family started coming back together after Dad died.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, you're not returning to the city because you obviously can't take care of yourself in the city.
Yeah, you can't handle it. It's too much for you.
I don't know where Yoshiko is at this point because she doesn't seem to come to the country. even though she saw him off
he goes
at
alone.
the asylum. So he goes to the country. I don't know if she was even told that he was taken out of the asylum.
To be entirely honest, that was one of the happy moments in the book for me, that she
Yoshiko got to go be free.
That she was free of him. Yeah.
So he's being taken care of by a caretaker who doesn't take very good care of him. And he says that she abuses him. I don't know if he's telling the truth or if he's exaggerating, because he's used to being pampered a lot.
I mean, but you gotta remember, like, his form of abuse is, I can't sleep, go get me sleeping pills, and she brings him sugar cubes. Like,
she brought him laxatives.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was laxatives. I was like, it wasn't sleeping pills.
No, he was trying to sleep and he couldn't get off the toilet all night.
Yeah, well, you know what? Like,
and he's like, well, this is my life and I'm only 27 at this point. I look like I'm 50 though.
Well, and so not only has he like been rode hard and put up wet, like the man tried to kill himself several times. He drank himself into oblivion. He's a severe morphine addict. He also, they gave me the impression that he had tuberculosis, that he was like coughing up blood.
Mm-hmm. That's in addition to him having a weak immune system the whole time. So I wouldn't.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so then that's the end of the bulk of the notebooks, and it comes back with the epilogue, where we return to the narrator from the beginning of the book, who was collecting the notebooks from Yozo's life from the bar that Yozo used to frequent. And this was the man who had been looking at the photos in the beginning of the novel, and the barkeep has nothing nice to say, or nothing but nice words to say about Yozo.
Yeah.
Because everybody just liked him. Like what Yozo was experiencing on the inside about how tortured he was, everybody around him only saw him as this happy person, this really nice person, this charming person.
Because he was always smiling and faking it for everybody else. And nobody had any idea that his entire life was a misery. All of it.
And that is the book. Did you have anything that didn't fit into that you wanted to add into anything?
No. It's so tragically. Also, did yours have a foreword in it?
A foreword? Like, mine had.
By the translator?
Yes, I had a comment on that because I thought it was so weird that it's going into this excuse of going, look, he's not American, he's not Western, but he consumed a lot of Western art and he's got this different interpretation of it. And I thought it was funny because we get a lot of things from as Americans going, hey, you're interpreting this foreign thing weird or wrong. And it felt kind of like making an excuse, but I'm experiencing your story and your life and your experiences from your version of them. It doesn't have to be accurate.
I also felt like the translator was making excuses, and I don't think that this book needs any excuses made for it. I don't think it does either. It was absolutely stunning. Tragic, but stunning. I'm so glad you picked it.
Thank you. I was reading it and I was like, oh no, she just did Dead Skin Mask. I hope this isn't like a bad experience followed that.
Because it's like, it's hard to explain why they're so similar, other than the main character hates themselves on a deep level and also hates everyone else and also thinks everyone's stupid, and also like at the core, if you break it down to its simplest parts, they are basically the same story minus the serial killing, serial self-killing instead of serial hobo killing. Can you call people hobos anymore? I don't know. I'm like, fuck it.
Look, okay. I have Hobo Simulator on my Steam account.
Okay. Anyway, this is me not PC. Anyway, like the main characters and their mentality are so similar, and yet the feeling that you get when reading the story and the visceral reaction I got from reading No Longer Human, and the anger that I experienced when reading I got mad when reading Dead Skin Mask. It was so different, even though basically it was the same story.
Well, I think part of it has to do with there's more self-reflection, and Yozo rejects a lot of responsibility, but he still takes more of it onto himself than the narrator of Dead Skin Mask. And with Yozo, he also sees glimmers of good in other people. Like you have him with Shizuko and the daughter, and that's he lets himself out before he can mess that up. Yeah. But he also sees it in Yoshiko, and he sees how he messed up Yoshiko, and you don't even see him being like resentful that Yoshiko's not there, or that he's taken away, or that he he only has good things to say about her, even though
Yeah.
up to the last moment that he sees her. And then after that, he doesn't have anything negative to say.
Yeah, basically,
But then-
Yozo's impression is the worst thing that ever happened to Yoshiko was she married me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mhm.
And so, but then in Dead Skin Mask, the only nice character to Mortimer, he still hates her and he
Yeah.
despises her in the end. And so, like, there's a difference in that,
Yeah.
where Yozo is still self-reflective. He's an egotist, but he's still self-reflective, and he still
Yeah.
recognizes his own follies while he's going, I don't feel like I'm human.
Yeah.
And I see all of these problems with humans, and that's why I'm better than them, but I'm also worse than them because I see these other problems with me.
Yeah.
And I still see more hope in other people that aren't me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then
they're
Mortimer,
awful, but I'm worse.
but Mortimer doesn't have any of that.
No.
Mortimer's just kind of like, let it all burn.
Yeah, there's no self-reflection. I some of that could be, how do I put this? I'm trying to put this in a way that is not offensive to the author, because I genuinely like the author of Dead Skin Mask. But I feel like some of it's to do with the age of the author when they wrote the book and their perception of the world around them. Because I feel like there's an inherent back burner anger at the world that a lot of people, myself included, experience in their late teens and early 20s that you just can't shake until you grow out of it.
I could feel that.
Yeah. And
I felt something similar to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It felt like, in a way, the same kind of thing that gets people to really connect with the Joker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you just become, I'm not going to try fixing anything anymore. I'm just going to go full chaos agent because I don't think anything is worth it anymore. And it is in that late teens, early 20s to mid 20s where that happened. You know, where we were all doing the alternative rock and the emo and the.
mine was a little earlier than yours, I think, Ian. But yeah.
Well, I know it's still the same existential.
Oh yeah, it's the same no matter what. It doesn't matter what generation it's in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying.
So I feel like we do this weird expansion and contraction, this like dilation and contraction of our view of the world versus our place in it. I think that like when you're really, really little, the world is all about you, right? It's all about you because everybody else around you is focused on you, you know, and then as you, oh, hello. Tatum. Hi, buddy. He's very excited.
Yep, he's just starting to get restless now.
All right, bud. Okay, so we all start at like 5 when we can start to communicate, and we think that the whole world's about us because it is. And then as we like grow up and get like 16, 20, 22, our view of the world expands, and we start to realize like, oh shit, there's all this other stuff going on. There's all this stuff around me, and everything is awful because, you know, it kind of is. You know, there's wonderful things too, but there's a lot of really awful things. And because the way that humans' brains work, we tend to focus on the bad stuff because that's what helps us survive. Yeah. And then you grow out of that too in another 20 years, and everything sort of contracts back down, and you narrow your focus down, and you're like, okay, yeah, everything around me is on fire. I can't control that. What I can control is this really small, tiny little locus of stuff like me and my little family and my little world. And you like bring your whole world focus back down. And I think the difference in those perspectives between 20 and like 40 or whatever it happens to be, whatever the age gap happens to be, I think that's the difference in the writing styles and the way that the same character was basically written in 2 vastly different ways.
Yep. And one of them became self-destructive and one of them became externally destructive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to highlight this really quick because Rainer just dropped a 20. So thank you for the nice stream. Also, thank you to the beautiful Effie for being here for the conversation and for reading the book with me, because her perspective and her take on everything gives me a different perspective. It's also why I appreciate her book reviews. So go watch her book reviews and follow her channel for the way that she looks at stuff. Sometimes we read the same books.
We do. Sometimes we read the same book. Sometimes I'll read something and record it, and then I'll get a notification that you've made a video, and I'm like, dude, I just read that. What do you mean? What are you talking about? That is not what that said. You know?
Well, now I'm like, what else have we read?
Oh,
also,
goodness.
I have to disagree. He says, eat bugs, save a cow. No, I'm eating all the cows so you can have all the bugs. I'm saving the bugs for you.
I actually enjoyed Light Lark. I'm not kidding. Like,
I know
you
did.
it.
I know you did. We've got Light Lark's biggest fan on the server.
I don't know about biggest fan, but I did like it. Like, I understand that it's deeply flawed, but I liked Light Lark. Like, I think I'm probably the only person who read it that actually liked it.
Nah, Vanya's the biggest fan. We have Vanya. Also, they didn't hate it, like absolutely hate it on unresolved textual tension.
They're so catty. They're so catty. I watched their stuff and I'm like, okay, don't let this influence the way that you talk about things because we're not like this over here. You know, I have to be careful and like rein it in a little bit. You know,
I kind of do mine the same way. I make jokes, but then I try to be serious and also make jokes at the same time. And I'm like, oh no.
I try not to be a catty bitch, but every now and then it sneaks out. Oh, other things we've read. I know that you read The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci.
Yes.
Did you read The Cyborg Tinker by Meg Latour?
Yes, I read that was the first loin stream, and that was also the first loin stream of last year because we did an anniversary stream.
Yep. So we both read those.
And also, I don't know if you've read Eve the Awakening.
Look, I have not. I went and bought it after your loin stream is what happened. It's sitting on my shelf. I can see it from here.
No, it's sitting on my bookshelf as well. There is no saving leather and lace. No, there's not. Well, one of the other things that I wanted to mention with this, I had a quote in here for, I am convinced if human life is filled with many pure, happy, serene examples of insincerity, truly splendid of their kind, of people deceiving one another without, strangely enough, any wounds being inflicted, of people who seem unaware even that they are deceiving one another. But I have no special interest in instances of mutual deception.
Yep, benign dishonesty, basically.
And also, I'm the only one that's allowed to lie.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in mutual dishonesty.
No, you can't lie to me.
I want to lie to you.
Yeah, if I do it, it's benign. If you do it, it's malicious.
Yeah. And let's see. An interesting reaction on the outside versus what Yozo thinks of himself and how he sees others versus how he sees himself. Yeah, the contrast of throughout how he believes himself as and how everyone else responds of him, where in some ways it could seem like, why did his dad not pull him aside or somebody pull him aside and say, hey, learn how to act right?
Yeah.
But it from the outside, it looks like he did learn how to act right. He learned how to act right too well.
Yeah. I found the layers between what the other characters in the book viewed him as, what he viewed himself as, and what you as the reader view him as or are privy to and allowed to view him as. I found the dynamic between those three opposing viewpoints. I thought that was so interesting. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I enjoyed the book so much is because it was so subtly done. Like, they never told you in the book, like, oh, he's an egoist. Like, oh, he's an arrogant prick. Oh, he's like, they never tell you that, but you see it because you're watching him move through the world. And it was just really nuanced and just really cool. It was really cool.
And then you get to the end after, you've seen all of this life and you've seen how he describes himself, where he's egotistical, but he also understands like how much of a shit person he is. Like even at the end when he's like, I'm 27 and this is my life and this is just what my life is now. And I kind of deserve it.
It is what it is.
And he accepts what his follies are, even if he doesn't go, I did all of these things to myself. He accepts that the outcome that he's got is the one that he deserves.
Yeah.
And then you get the perspective of the barkeeper that he lived with for some of that time, who's got nothing but nice things to say about him to add to that contrast.
I don't understand what happened to him. He was such a happy man.
Mm-hmm. And so I agree with you on that.
Yeah, it was a great read. I'm very glad that you picked it. It's not something I would have picked myself.
Well, I heard about it like a month or two ago, and I was like, oh, I want to read this because I've heard some things about it.
Yeah.
Mostly just that it's very well known, and also it was depressing, and also it was very interesting.
I didn't find it depressing. It's the content is sad. I think
that's
tragic.
More the word. Sad.
Yeah, but sad. I didn't find it depressing. But I'm also not particularly affected that way by a lot of things. So maybe that's just a me thing,
This just means next time you get to pick the book. So hopefully
Ooh. Okay. I am up for that.
If you want to go for another one,
I do want to go for another one, and I am up for that challenge. I'm gonna have to find something that I think that we can both read. That's, you know, because I read a lot of garbage, and you read a lot of garbage.
I know, that's why I was like, I picked this. I'm like, well, I hope this isn't garbage. I mean, it's supposed to be a certain kind of classic. So
it is a classic. I can see why.
Okay, good. I was like, I don't know what this is, and I'm like, I hope that we don't hate it.
No, I don't hate it at all. I don't hate it at all. I will definitely recommend this to other people for sure.
I meant when I picked it up and when I was like, hey, F, read this, I was like, I hope that this isn't a fail for both of us.
Yeah,
I don't know what this book is going to be like.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, it's hard to say I liked this book, but I really enjoyed reading it.
It was a fun read. And also, it's a good example for the writers in the chat. Most of this book is told through telling. It's not like a showy book. You're not going through these experiences. It's like listening to somebody talk about their life.
Yeah. So it's like if you sat down at a bar with him and he was telling you his life story, it feels like that.
And so if you get the advice that you can only show to tell a good story, that's not true. You just have to go and find the people that have effectively told stories through telling. And it is a specific type of craft.
That whole concept is nonsense, because if you read almost any classic, they're all telling. All of them.
Yeah. Well, that's why I kind of fight back on it and remind people, hey, I know that you're going to hear this 1.5 million times because you go to any writing advice, anything, and it's like, show, don't tell. And how many times you go into a critique group and they're like, show, don't tell. And you're like, that's not helpful.
Yeah, but
look, I before E except after C.
Unless
I think we can tell and show.
How about we do both, yo? How about we do both?
Hey, stop.
All right, so I'll pick the next one. It's probably
she'll pick the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep you guys posted. Thank you everybody for joining. Go and follow Effie on her channel for more book reviews that we may or may not accidentally coordinate without trying. And get her opinions because she's got fun opinions.
I have lots of opinions. I don't know about fun, but I've got lots of them.
Look. They're fun if you say them.
They're fun if you don't take it personally.
This is true. You're fun if you know how to smile. Thank you everybody for joining on this Sunday night. Hope you all have a great evening, a great start of your week because of this existential discussion. We're thinking deeply.
Yeah, we were starting the week out with sunshine.
There you go. Have a great night, everybody, and don't die. After it ends it.